Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hi, I'm Thomas Hubert, digital editor at the Farmers Journal. I'm here with my colleague Lorcan Allen, who is in Dublin City Centre all day this Tuesday for the budget announcements. And maybe, Lorcan, could you start by telling us a bit about the atmosphere and the sense of expectation around Leinster House on Tuesday afternoon?
Yeah, absolutely, Thomas. I suppose the atmosphere beforehand was, there was a good expectation, but I think the department and the government had went to long lengths to leak a lot of the measures they were about to introduce. So there wasn't a lot of surprises thrown up on the day, but we spent most of the day in Buswell's Hotel across the road from Leinster House, and there was a good buzz around the place. A lot of the lobby groups, farm organisations were there on the ground, and we were gauging their reactions over the course of Minister Noonan's speech to the announcements.
And one of the main speakers, I suppose, that was expected on the farming side of things was Agriculture Minister Simon Coveney. So we'll first hear from him on a few of the key measures he wanted to highlight from this budget.
We have a proposal that means that a father and a son, or a mother and a daughter, or a father and a daughter, depending on what the family arrangement is and who wants to take over the farm, can actually set up a partnership now. And they'll be rewarded in the tax system for that by getting a tax credit of up to $5,000 a year for 5 years. So the partnership could actually benefit to the tune of €25,000 in tax credits over 5 years. It's going to cost about €10 million a year to the Exchequer, but I think it'll be more than worth it in terms of getting our objective over the line of getting more and more farm families handing over the reins and the decision-making powers from one generation to the next. We have more young farmers in agricultural college in Ireland now than we've ever had before. And so we need to make sure that that generation is not disappointed. When they come back home to farm, when they have the benefit of the skills and the education training that they will have got, which is better than any other generation has got it in previous times, we need to make sure that that actually is plugged into a formal partnership structure now and a transition arrangement that is supported in the tax system. So I can't emphasise enough why this is so strategic. This is, I think, one of the best spends of €10 million that you could possibly think of relating to agriculture. On the expenditure side, this is pretty good news as well. I mean, we are seeing an increase in expenditure as from the 2015 estimate to the 2016 estimate of €109 million. And that is a very significant increase in expenditure. In fact, it represents 8.8% of an increase in agri expenditure. As regards the Rural Development Programme, there's almost €500 million in the estimate for the Rural Development Programme next year, which is actually up 55 million on this year. So they are significant increases. And if you look at GLAS in particular, for this year, we have €20 million assigned for the GLAS, which is obviously the Green Low Carbon Agri-Environment Scheme, which is the big environmental scheme. Next year we have 142 million set aside for that GLAS scheme. And we hope to accept up to 40,000 participants in the GLAS scheme between the first phase that has already taken place and the second phase, which will open next week. We may not be able to get to the full 40, depending on what the average payment is and how close it is to the maximum payment of €5,000, but we are looking to accept in up to 40,000, which I think the farming organisations should be very pleased about, because it's way beyond what we had committed to previously.
So, Lorcan, a lot about young farmers in this budget, judging by what Minister Coveney was saying here.
Yeah, there was a good focus on young farmers, farm succession. Speaking to Mocker President Sean Finan afterwards, it was very warmly welcomed, and something that they had been lobbying hard for, certainly we're happy to get.
Okay, let's listen to Sean Finan now.
Very positive announcements for young farmers. We had lobbied hard for the extension of stamp duty and stock relief, which both have been extended to 2018, so that's welcomed. Also, we had lobbied for an increase in the capital acquisitions tax from 225, and it has been increased to 280, which is welcomed as well. And we're delighted with the measure that's announced of a €5,000 tax credit for partnerships, which will encourage transfer of land within families and also transfer in general. So we're we're very happy overall with the budget for young farmers.
So broadly positive overall.
Broadly positive. We have to see the finer details, obviously, of the other measures which will be announced. So we await them. But overall, what we've heard so far from the Minister for Finance, positive in terms of the stock relief, stamp duty relief, and also the measure with regard to partnerships and that €5,000 tax credit.
So these few highlights we've heard now from Minister Coveney and Sean Finan were not the only things in the budget. There was a lot more. Could you maybe, Lorcan, give us a run through some of the essential things farmers need to know at this stage?
Minister Coveney's highlight, I suppose, was announcing the $109 million extra increase in the Department of Agriculture budget, and directly off that was the increase in the GLOS scheme, which was broadly welcomed by the IFA as well. President Eddie Downey, who was happy to see the increase in places that will open for the scheme next week.
What about general taxation in this budget? There are not only the measures that are specifically targeted to farmers that are of interest to us at the moment, there are also a number of general measures for the whole population that will help farmers as well.
Absolutely. I think the Minister made a big effort, I suppose, to focus his attention on universal social charge, a very unpopular tax with Irish people. He cut the rates across the different rates, the 1.5% down to 1%, 3.5% rate down to 3%, and the 7% universal social charge rate down to 5.5%. He also announced a €550 tax credit for farmers or self-employed people, and that tax credit, together with the reduction in the USC rates, will see a farmer on the average farm income of €26,000 gain about an additional €800 per year in net income. I suppose as well, other things like a €5 increase in the child allowance will also, many farm families will be a benefit.
Okay, now you've just mentioned Eddie Downey, President of the IFA. Let's listen to his reaction to this budget.
I think it's broadly positive. I think we have to look at, we've been lobbying for such a long period of time on the whole area of PAY allowance and the unfairness of it, and now we see that that's finally been addressed. That's a huge plus for us. Getting a tax credit put in place there, that's critically important for us. The whole area of succession, the fact that he has that, it's finally been recognised by the Minister, by the Department of Finance, that there's a problem here with farm transfers, and putting in a €5,000 of a tax credit there, that's going to make a difference. We have to build on that obviously and try and strengthen and make it stronger over the next number of years, but it's a recognition of something we've been battling for a long time. The movement of capital acquisitions tax from 225 to 280, 280,000, that's going to make a difference. It's going to mean that we can effectively transfer 2.8 million of a farm from one generation to another without incurring capital gains tax. That's important to us, and we need to get it just helps again in the area of succession, getting those young well trained people onto farm. Stamp duty rates have been renewed, and stock relief allowance has been renewed. They're all critically important. Again, we lobby and we hope we like to see them in place. The one negative I might say is seeing this, and maybe it's how we manage the negative is important here. The increase in the minimum wage, it's going to put extra cost onto good, productive, active farms, and what we're going to have to see here is that the retailers, that they now recognise the fact that there's extra cost there that's got to be built into prices paid to farmers.
Minister also announced there are 13,000 extra places from GLOS opening up next week. Reaction to that?
Well, look, I'd like to have seen more. I think it brings the figure now to 40,000 people in GLOS this year. It's a lot of applications, a lot of people in the scheme, but we'd like to see more. We want to see the 50,000, the figure of 50,000 there as quickly as physically possible. I welcome it. I want to see it in place, and I welcome the fact that it's opening very quickly. But what we want now to see is some of the rules surrounding the application to be relaxed.
So overall there you see, Thomas, a very positive reaction across the board from farming organisations, from the industry, it just points to the fact that this was, I suppose, a bit of a giveaway budget from the government, and it all points to one thing, that a general election looks likely now in spring 2016, and I suppose the government will be hopeful that the impact of these measures, if they're felt by people, will help them gain re-election.
Of course. Now, that's an early analysis of this budget. We'll have a lot more. Keep logged into farmersjournal.ie and to the Farmers Journal app, and to the print edition this week of the Farmers Journal for more coverage and analysis of this week's budget announcements.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.